Martinelli became the 15th Arsenal player to be sent off under Arteta after he saw red. Join us now for more on last night's football. I have to say, I've never seen anything like that before. We're joined by former Liverpool midfielder Danny Murphy. Danny, morning, Dan.
Morning, Dan.
Morning, Dan.
Morning, chaps. You okay?
Have you ever seen that Dan before? I haven't. I thought, hold on, what's he going to do now?
The nearest I saw to it was Jimenez a few weeks ago, didn't he? He got a couple of yellows really, really quickly in the space of a minute or something. But there was a stop in play. But I agree with Jason Cundy. I don't understand the problem. Where's the problem with it? He's made two. The rules are what they are. He's made two bookable offences. In a space, all right, it's one passage of play, but it's sending off. It's not a big deal. I mean, fortunately, it didn't affect the game. I like Martinelli; he's a super player. He's been brilliant, but the naivety in his fouls there deserve what you get. I'm afraid.
Trev, I think. Do you know what I mean? Would some referees not have done that?
Some referees would have bottled it, I think, and I think it is bottling it because I'm with Danny. I said it earlier. You know, I think. When you make those two challenges, the first one, pure petulance. You know, he's trying to stop a throw-in. He's got his hands up. So he doesn't stop the throw-in. So he's already committed the first yellow card offence. And then he sees the red mist. He gets back in. He doesn't want this player getting on the ball. He pulls him back. It's another yellow card. But I was at the Wolves game at the Etihad, and I seen the Jimenez one, and he was a break-up in play, but he gave a free kick away, and then City give him plenty of time to get out of the way to take the free kick. And then he blocked it from about 2 yards away. It's very similar, and the right result, red card. And it's very dangerous what Arteta's coming out with trying to defend his players. I think that's the problem, especially a young player, because like I mentioned earlier, you're moulding him. You are kind of giving him the levels of standard. And if you're saying that standard's okay and you should not got a yellow card or 2 yellow cards, then what message are you sending to these young players?
Well, the only stick up for Martinelli would be if he did get a yellow card, then suddenly you're going to pull out of tackles. You're not going to go in like he did, I should imagine. But the rules are the rules, as you mentioned now, and he probably don't know the rules, I'm being honest.
But you know, Ray, if you've been booked, for the rest of that game, you're careful.
But he hasn't been booked, has he?
No, he's not had a chance to be booked.
So he hasn't been booked. So if he was have been booked, he might have not have done what he did in the second.
Yeah, it's a good point. He's just got a bit emotional in the moment, and he's got a bit of fire in his belly, a bit of anger. It hasn't affected the result. The only downside for Arsenal is they're losing for a game, aren't they?
Yeah, and he's a top player, like
he's the best player.
Well, Smith Rowe can come in for him though.
But Martinelli for me, that pace he's got and directness,
different profile.
Dan, Liverpool last night in action, beating Leicester 2-0. They go to Burnley now. Is it over, Dan, or can they somehow reduce these points to make it interesting with City?
I think all they can do is try and match City till they play them, and then of course they've got to beat them. Yeah. So there's a lot of ifs and buts and maybes along the way, but they'll have to believe. I mean, they look strong. They look like the only team capable, of course, but probably the highlight of the evening was the new signing Diaz. In terms of, we're talking about this season and maybe not catching City, but trying to stay with City for the next few seasons. When you look at the youngsters now he's bringing in, you can see he's trying to mix things up and change things a little bit. Diaz looked tremendous. You've got Harvey Elliott on the way back. Curtis Jones is getting back to his best. Canate's young. Jota's firing in goals. So you can see a little bit. It's been a bit more of a long-term plan going on at Liverpool at the moment, as well as trying to stay with City this season, if that makes sense.
And he's got to be the best number 9 at the moment, Dan. Do you agree with that, Jota?
Well, I mean, you say number 9, they play all over the place, don't they? He's on the left, he's on the right, he's through the middle. He's just got this wonderful knack of gliding into great areas. And actually, I don't know if you saw the game, but up until the goal, you hadn't really seen that much of him, but his goals to games ratio is phenomenal, and his technique around, he said it very calm in here around the box. Yeah. And for the first time in a long, I say first time, he was the first player to come into Liverpool and get people actually discussing the fact that front three of Firmino, Salah and Mane might not have to be the answer for the next 5 years. And now Diaz has come in. I mean, for your first performance at Anfield for a young lad, his touch and his awareness, what a player.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I agree, Dan. I've been so impressed with Harvey Elliott. It was just a shame that he got injured when he did, because I think the biggest thing for me is his decision-making. When to take one touch, when to take two, when to have a little dribble with it. He seems to have got that nailed down at such a young age, which is very impressive. Looking forward to the end of this month, 27th of Feb, Carabao Cup final. How do you see that going, Dan, against Chelsea?
Well, it's one of those games, isn't it? Fine margins with all the brilliant players on display. I'm going to the game, actually looking forward to it. But I always fancy Liverpool in a final just because of the years and years of success they've had. Very rarely lose finals, Liverpool. But with Chelsea, if they're at it, you know, you've got a tough game. I think with the competition Liverpool have got in forward areas, I would say they look a bit, their firepower looks a bit better than Chelsea's at the moment. There's no one from Chelsea who's absolutely, you know, banging goals in, week out, as we've talked about with the dipping form of Lukaku, the other Werner not banging in the goals. Whereas Liverpool, you've got 3 or 4 who bang at it, or 2 or 3 at least bang at it at the moment.
Dan, one of the games, if not the game I'm looking forward to, is Everton Leeds at the weekend. Cracker, and this is, it's so important. I don't want to see Everton go down. I know you had fantastic rivalry, Danny, you know, at Liverpool, but Everton Leeds, I fancy a few goals. Which way do you see this one going? It's because Everton now are on thin ice.
Well, I was actually I really disappointed with Everton's display at Newcastle. I know they lost Gray and Mina, which doesn't help because Gray's been one of the best players. But they went out of the game. They lost the game with a whimper. Really, it wasn't even close. The second half, they didn't show enough fight and spirit, which is maybe a lack of confidence, to be fair, as Frank was talking about. So I see this as a huge game for them. But the way Leeds played at West Ham, you know that they're going to make chances. I think a lot will depend on team selection for Frank. The balance of the side didn't look quite right after the substitutions, did it? I know it's hard when you go to a new club, but Dele coming in and finding the right role for him in the team, and Van der Beek. I think it's one of those games where it matters about performance at all. I know new managers talk about performance and wanting improvement.
Result.
Just the result. However, by hook or by crook, and if Calvert-Lewin's fit enough to be on the bench, then you might as well risk him and start him, because at this point of the season, you need points, and quick.
Are you with Alan, Danny? Dele Alli turning up in a Rolls Royce?
I thought it was a bad decision. I think you've got to read the room. Evertonians, the area, the way they think, the mentality. You're giving yourself a mountain to climb if you don't start well, if you're turning up in a Rolls Royce. And you know, it's people will have different opinions in it and say we're dinosaurs. And I think there's a way to conduct yourself, to give yourself a chance. The way you talk, the way you present yourself. I mean, I remember being at Liverpool when I first turned up there in my little seat at Ibiza. I was honestly, I was 7 months down the line. I was earning, I think I was on $3,000 a week. And Robbie Fowler pulled me one day and said to me, "Look, you know, you're embarrassing yourself in that car. You're allowed to get yourself something." But I didn't want to come across as flash. And one of the lads like Robbie said to me, "You know, just get yourself some." Ended up with a Mazda with new alloys and a CD player. I was buzzing, but you get my drift, don't you? I mean, maybe times are changing, but this thing about it doesn't matter what you drive and what you wear. Well, it does matter, because it's a representation of who you are.
You've been hanging about with Simon Jordan too much, Dan.
No, it's just me, mate.
This is the voice of reason, Danny. Thank you.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Alan Brazil. Thursday and Friday morning, 6 till 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.